Hi, I'm Radha Stirling and welcome to our podcast Gulf Injustice Qatar session. Qatar, a human rights catastrophe with widespread arbitrary detention and legal abuse. Jonathan Nash, an innocent father, was sentenced to 37 years over bounced checks. Similarly, Joseph Sarlak was jailed over bounced checks after being scapegoated by a local company. But today we're talking about Ranald Crook, British national and construction professional detained in Doha over a string of proven false charges. The families of detainees in Doha fear that they'll never see their loved ones again. Today we're talking to David Plowman, a British national who's been lobbying for his friend Ranald Crook, a long-term friend who he's known since the university days. Now, Ranald has been detained in the Middle East. He's been stuck in Doha for over 6 years. 73-year-old Gloucestershire resident Ranald Crook and his family excitedly decided to relocate to Qatar in 2005. But little did they know this endeavour would leave him separated from his family, his children and grandchildren he hasn't even met, absent at his father's death, and stuck in the desert facing lifelong captivity and possible incarceration in Doha's notorious central prison. Qatar's ambition has been steadily growing over the past decade, and especially since the Saudi-led blockade, the country has increased its competitiveness in the propaganda war that has plagued the region. Investing into universities, news and media outlets, think tanks and business commerce groups. With this vigorous effort, the country has managed to attract entrepreneurs, investors and development, including Doha becoming a major transit hub. Like the UAE has exemplified, like future Saudi Arabia will, there is a colossal difference between what is marketed to expats and tourists and what is reality on the ground. It is this unspoken discrepancy that has led to the downfall of so many expat entrepreneurs in the Gulf. While Qatar has made complaints to the International Criminal Court in respect of human rights violations during the blockade, it has also been the subject of criticisms for violations against migrant workers after winning the bid for FIFA 2022. Qatar was commended by human rights organisations for the improvements they made to worker conditions. Overlooked, however, are professional expatriates who bring their skills and funding to Qatar to improve the country, its image, economy and international standing, only to find themselves abused, robbed and behind bars, wondering what went wrong. Father of two, Ranald Crook, a seasoned chartered civil engineer and construction professional, was accustomed to directing large-scale projects abroad, including Jumeirah Beach Hotel and the Burj Al Arab. Excited to be forming a construction company in Qatar, a seemingly lucrative location with limitless possibilities, he founded Geosun Construction Dynamics. Similarly to the UAE, Qatar requires foreign nationals to enlist local Qatari nationals as partners in their businesses, even if their involvement is silent. Ranald founded the company with 2 international companies and partnered with 2 Qatari brothers. The brothers were entitled to 2.25% of the company's turnover in return for dealing with local matters, such as the procurement of visas, securing payments on time, and settlement of claims. They invested no money in the company. The brothers rejected their duties, and as a consequence, on one prestigious building contract, it took 4 years to secure settlement of significant claims. As a result of their failures, the company suffered substantial losses, and the chairman, one of the major shareholders, ordered all payments to the brothers be halted. The Hajiri brothers retaliated. In June 2014, they refused to renew Ranald's exit permit to prevent him from leaving Qatar. And in 2014, one of the brothers took legal action, civil legal action, falsely claiming that Ranald himself had mismanaged the company and that he owed the brothers 5 million Qatari riyals. Involvement in a court case where money was allegedly owed resulted in Ranald being subject to a travel ban. Of course, the allegations the brothers made were unfounded and easily disproved. A full expert audit of the company was performed and found that rather than owing Al Hajiri the money, he had actually been overpaid, and Ranald himself was owed some 7 million Qatari riyals in unpaid wages. Though the case was initially rejected on evidence, Al Hajiri appealed, and Ranald endured over 2 years of hearings and procedures before the first case was finally thrown out at the Court of Cassation. But the brothers wouldn't stop. After failing in the first civil case, one of the brothers filed another civil case, the same as the first, but dropping allegations that a sum of 5 million was due to him. Strangely, no court papers were received, and 6 months after it commenced, Ranald discovered its existence. In short, Ranald's local partners have exploited the Qatari legal system in order to pressure Ranald into paying them funds that simply aren't owed. Now, it's devastating to the reputation of Qatar and to the image of Qatar to have people like these local sponsors who have misused the legal system in order to pressure Ranald into paying funds that aren't owed. This is not beneficial for Qatar overall. On an individual basis, these brothers, these sponsors might be happy, but the country as a whole is suffering greatly because it's allowing this abuse, this vexatious litigation to exist. Now, one of the reasons why this has been allowed to continue is that the Al Hajiri brothers happen to belong to a large and influential family with a persuasive presence in the government. Wasta roughly translates in England to social influence and connections, and the Al Hajiri brothers have a lot of it. And as a foreigner, Ranald has none. Despite spending most of his life helping to build the Gulf countries, acting as almost a private sector ambassador of British know-how and enterprise for decades, Ranald was one of the earliest Western entrants into the construction sector in the Middle East, when most people considered it too risky. But now he's being outrageously abused by a system that continues to favour locals and dismisses the basic rights of expats who are guilty until proven innocent. What is happening to Ranald in Qatar is distressingly common throughout the GCC. These countries vie for foreign investment, and they recruit Western professionals to help build successful companies, but turn around and treat them as disposable and their investments as free gifts. When they are challenged, it's because they know the court systems will support them. They level false allegations against their expat victims. In Qatar, we've seen that in cases of Joe Sarlach and Jonathan Nash, both of whom were essentially scapegoated for the wrongdoing of local business associates. In Ranald's case, the locals did not want to work, but still wanted to be paid. And they feel they can harass Ranald indefinitely through the courts. So far, they've been right, but this abuse has to end. Countries like Qatar and the UAE cannot continue to exploit and abuse Western professionals and investors while simultaneously touting their countries as hubs for investments and entrepreneurs. So now let's talk to David Plowman, friend of Ranald Crook. So David, thanks for coming on the show. You've known Ranald a long time, haven't you?
Yes, a long time. It goes back to our college days in Plymouth we both graduated in 1973, which is a long time ago. And there were, of course, a lot of his colleagues whom we've kept in touch with to try the campaign, move it forward. So there's about 15 guys that I've been in touch with. I sort of launched this sort of campaign about a year ago to try and help him because he just wasn't getting anywhere. And I think that's actually come up trumps with quite a few openings, especially through the British government as well. But yeah, he and I have known one another a long time. We know one another very well. He was my best man at my wedding. I was similarly his best man at his wedding. So we go back a long way. And my career started in sort of 76 when I went to Libya. And I've been working overseas ever since. Well, not in the last 4 or 5 years. And our paths have crossed around the world, which is interesting. And one of those actually was in Qatar. So we've worked, both of us have worked in the Middle East a lot, and we know the Arab world very well, especially Ranald. And we've both held fairly high positions on our projects all around the world, but particularly in the Middle East. So neither of us are unknowledgeable as far as the Arab mentality is concerned, which is really important.
I saw that because I can see here that Ranald was also working on some construction projects in the UAE as well before he went to Qatar.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. I mean, he has worked on some big ones, and that has brought forward his experience and his skills. He's a professional engineer. He's a graduate BSc, and he's a member of the Institution of Civil Engineers. Now, I haven't involved them yet, but I have actually thought about contacting them, because the Institution of Civil Engineers sends engineers all over the world, particularly to Qatar of recent years, especially on the metro schemes, lots of projects, and they're very dependent on professional British engineers to bring that experience to their country.
I mean, Qatar's investing a substantial amount of money into the UK, and that's, you know, whether it's buying properties, whether it's investing in advertising, but essentially they're luring British nationals over to Qatar, and particularly the skilled ones and the people in construction, the engineers. So Qatar is luring our best skilled people over to the country to help develop it, and at the same time not affording them those protections. And then we have Qatar really investing into newspapers, into propaganda, essentially in the UK, promoting the country as a Middle Eastern destination that has a higher standard of care for human rights than neighboring countries like the UAE and like Saudi Arabia. But when you see cases like this, like Ranald's and several others that we've been dealing with, and also the migrant workers, as we know, and the British government not really doing anything when they see a situation like this, we have to get members of the British government questioning higher up forces about why they're not doing anything to encourage Qatar to address human rights violations like Ranald's. And the embassy itself, usually embassies actually, whatever country they're in, don't offer that much service. But in this case, he's been asking for a long time. There's no foreseeable conclusion to this matter. And the embassy is really in Qatar more to promote British commerce interests.
Yeah.
And I think what they don't understand is that our commercial interests coincide with Qatar being able to protect them when we go there. So that's on an individual basis, but also a commercial basis. If our investments, our financial investments into businesses in Qatar can't be protected, and if our individuals and skilled labor can't be protected by Qatar, then the commercial relationship between the UK and Qatar is just an illusion anyway. So they really do need to intervene and tie that up and work together to ensure that the rights of British citizens like Ranald are protected. Apart from these three cases, there are very few foreign nationals getting into trouble in Qatar, or very few Western nationals, I should say. There's very few investors and business people getting into trouble in Qatar like they are in the UAE, where their prisons are full of people who have been jailed for bounce checks or credit card debt or landlord-tenant disputes. We don't see that as much in Qatar. So if they could just release the perhaps, I would estimate probably 50 to 100 based on the intel I'm receiving from other detainees in Qatar, probably 50 to 100 people, and they're cycling, but at any one time, that's around the amount of foreign nationals they have in the local prison there anyway, for bounce checks and similar, And I think if they could get that under control, release these three people, put in a few extra safeguards, then they're not doing too bad in comparison to their neighbours. But again, that could simply be because it's not exactly the biggest tourist destination. I mean, apart from FIFA 2020 or 2022 coming up, obviously
that will be a bit of a game changer, won't it?
It will.
Is that the one to focus on? I don't know.
Oh, definitely we need to focus on that. But I think that's going to bring the tourists, but it's also going to bring a lot of skilled engineers over there in the meantime as they build up and prop up the country.
I think a majority of that is already done, of course. A lot of the construction would have been
Would have been already.
completed by now. I suppose the bottom line really is that Ranald is, yeah, I've known him a long time. He's not the sort of person that would take advantage of any situation
Oh,
overseas. He's rational. He's a very careful thinker. Um, he's just. I was surprised by what was happening because he's not the type that would cause a lot of ripples, if
yeah.
you know what I mean. It's against his sort of whole character really to get into this trouble.
I mean,
And
how do you think he's been coping, really?
well, I very well in actual fact. The fact that he's been there 6 years and he hasn't made a great deal of noise
Yeah.
would would make him quite different from myself. I would have been making a lot more noise earlier on.
He's a patient
And,
man, that's for
and
sure.
I would certainly have gone into the British Embassy and banged the table a little bit more. But that's the sort of person he is. You know, he doesn't want to disturb things too much.
Yes.
He probably knows the situation with his sponsor. He's now got a new sponsor, which might complicate matters. You don't know how the two sponsors get on.
Right.
But I think that you know, he's been very, very guarded and very careful, perhaps unnecessarily so. It's gone on too long, and now I think he you know he's 73, and he can possibly see he may never escape that place. It must be really worrying for his family. He's got a son in New Zealand, a grandson he's never seen, and he's got the other one, Ross, who's in the UK, not that far from where I am. And if anything happened to Ranald, what the hell's going to happen to Murray? I don't know.
Obviously, this has had a financial toll on him as well.
Yeah.
He's been stuck there for 6 years. He's had to employ, no doubt, lawyers, and
Mm,
uh, that's obviously going to have a terrible impact on him.
mm,
And he's gone to a country essentially for, you know, to provide his skills, to provide his expertise, and then
mm,
he ended up probably losing a substantial
mm.
amount of his savings, which,
Yes.
you know, makes it difficult. Even when he does get back to the UK, it's probably in a lesser position than when he entered the country. So it's a
Yeah.
lot of wasted time when you think about it, isn't it? It's you know,
It
you get
is
to,
terrible.
like you say, 73. So he went there in 2005. So we're talking 15 years he's given to Qatar, and that time has basically been robbed if he comes back to the UK with essentially nothing of
Yeah.
that productive time. So
Yeah.
that's, I mean, that's also something to consider when you're going to a country like this. You want to be assured that what you invest in that country is going to benefit you in some way, not just them. I mean, from what I can see, Ranald has won every single court case to date, but every time
Mm,
he wins, the boys go back and they reopen another case
mm.
against him. And
Yeah.
they know that they're probably going to lose at the end, but they're using the legal system as a
Mm,
tool of
mm.
extortion, essentially, to
Yeah.
force him to come to a negotiating table and offer money to them that is not actually owed. So I
Mm,
see this is a common practice in Qatar. So, very, very common. And we can see that even the banks are doing it. They're misusing the Interpol database as a tool of extortion as well. So we can see that it's a pattern of abuse. They either use the legal system or misuse it, um, or they misuse the Interpol system. And all of these cases are taken against other people, and they're vexatious cases, vexatious litigation against
mm,
other people simply for the purpose of pressuring them to pay money that is probably not owed. In Ranald's case, I understand it's not owed. And in cases where the banks have taken the Interpol reports against people, often it's been when there has actually been nothing owed. The credit cards have been fully paid off, or the mortgages have been fully paid off, but they're just
mm.
putting someone on Interpol essentially to extort them, and they keep them in a foreign prison where they've been arrested in another country and demand that they pay the bank money to lift the
Yeah.
Interpol notice.
Yeah.
Now that's a complete abusive system, and the Qatari government is obviously allowing that. And I think they're allowing it in this case as well. They're allowing these vexatious litigations to go ahead. And we have to kind of have a look at why they're allowing that, because Okay, in the short term, it's appeasing people. It's appeasing some perhaps VIP Qatari nationals who might have connections with the royal family, and they're able to extract as much as they can from foreign nationals.
Yeah.
But in the long term, it's so damaging to the image of Qatar and to overall relations with foreign governments that it's simply not
Yeah.
worth it just to
No.
appease a few individuals. And it's the same thing that happens in the UAE all the time, is
Right.
important people, and in Ranald, he's up against some VIPs in his case. Again, important people just misuse and abuse the legal system so that they can extort money from foreigners. And I do see that that's what's happening in this case. And I think that the Qatari government should actually start taking an interest because it's affecting their diplomatic relations with other countries. Now, we're delighted that Ross Crook is actually joining us on today's podcast to discuss his father, Ranald Crook, who's been detained in Qatar for 6 years. Now, we were talking to Ranald's friend David just a few days ago before speaking with his son now. David spoke about how much Ranald had actually brought to the Middle East in general, how much he'd brought to the UAE previously, and how much he brought to Qatar as far as a skilled labourist is concerned. Now, he's an engineer. He's brought his know-how, his skills, and he's encouraged a commercial relationship between Qatar and the UK. And now over to Ross. Over the past 6 years, what's the impact really been on the family from your perspective?
Well, I mean, I think the sort of the large part of him not being around is probably just I'm missing that father figure in our lives. I think not just myself, but my brother as well.
Okay.
I think with regards to him being out and away, we've always been quite used to that, but not sort of being able to see him, on the times where, you've got special occasions like birthdays, Christmases, newborn baby, his grandchild, and then obviously the sort of other things that aren't so lovely, like funerals, him not sort of being there. He's always been the sort of the organizer, the sort of the person that will sort of generally deal with most things. So I think with regards to my grandparents and my grandfather especially, sort of around about 2014 when mum was basically looking after Pops, his health was deteriorating and dad couldn't leave, or dad couldn't get out and, just check him out and see how he's going on. Could only check him out on Skype from time to time. And that's not going to give you the whole sort of feeling, if you like, because it's obviously through a computer screen. And I think from the sort of funeral side of things, the massive upset it did for mum, him not being there for her, not being able to be there for her.
Well, she had to take care of him alone, didn't she, for quite a while, and would have appreciated having him there. Yeah.
Yeah, there were such situations where, I mean, after Nan passed away, my granddad probably deteriorated quite quickly because he had nothing to do. He had nothing really to keep him going. So every day he used to drive down to my grandmother's, care home, and then that would keep him going. After my grandmother passed away, there wasn't anything really there to keep him going, and he lost his, he had to surrender his license. He lived on top of a hill, which the doctor said he couldn't really walk up the hill to get down it.
Yeah.
So, mum really sort of stepped in, trying to get carers in for him, Meals on Wheels, and he's obviously quite an independent chap, so he would obviously go along with it, and then obviously he might just send them away. So sometimes he wouldn't eat properly. So I was always worried about that. And then we managed to get him into a care home, which is quite nice down the seafront. So he sort of made some friends there and various other bits and bobs. And through one reason or another, he ended up getting changed to another care home, which wasn't so suited to him. And that's where he sort of left. And I always remember moving his stuff from one to the other, and the look on his face when we left him there, it was like, what have you done? Left me in this place? It was a bit of a, not saying nut house, but it maybe a little bit more of what wasn't as calm as what he was used to in the past. So, and unfortunately, Dad never really saw any of that. It was yeah, I think for Mum, yeah, massive hit really for what she had to do. She's always on a plane back and forth, you know, counting up the air miles. But it's just, I think he's missed a huge chunk of life being sat there. You know, in his old, you know, he's not exactly a spring chicken anymore. And this sort of, you know, I see people his age, Mum's age, you know, they're enjoying their retirement. They're out, you know, they've got so many plans they want to do, sort the house out. Whether they want to move again, I don't know. See the grandchild, go and annoy my brother for a bit. Now he's just moved house. But yeah, I think sort of what Dad's always said is that Pops' funeral was the worst day of his life because he couldn't be there. Couldn't be there to say goodbye. Really, wasn't there to say, "See you later." You know, thanks for everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, did you spend a lot of time in the Middle East yourself, or?
No, I was what Dad's friends called one of the ones, the expat kids that didn't go back. So I left Dubai in the must have been about 93, I think it was in the end, and I was sent to boarding school. So it was a good thing because having been in boarding school, they realised I was short-sighted, and I needed a bit more extra time doing stuff. So that was quite good, and it's not for me. I guess because I've moved around quite a lot when I was a kid, I didn't really have anywhere to sort of settle. So now for me, you know, down in South Devon is perfect. So, you know, putting some roots down here and stuff I haven't really been able to do most of my life because I've always been up and about following Dad around. So, but it's been a great opportunity. You know, seen the world almost, well, the middle part of it, most of it. So yeah, it's been really interesting that way.
So you were quite exposed to the Middle East when you were younger, and now you've kind of found roots in Devon. Yes, I can understand that. Okay, so what's your impression of Qatar now? Like, did this come up as a surprise to you? I mean, the fact that, you know, his local sponsors are responsible for basically his ongoing detention, is that something that you were aware of that could be a risk or a problem, or were you ever concerned about it before it happened?
Dad keeps things close to his chest. Not a man to suddenly tell you what's going on. So he kind of lets you know if you need to know. My brother was obviously there a lot longer than I'd been there. I've fleeted in and out of Qatar just on sort of holidays and stuff like that, and you know, never really spent much time there. From the most part of what I saw, you know, it's just a developing nation, if you like. You know, sort of, he wants to play what he wants to be like Dubai and Abu Dhabi, that sort of side of things. You know, it's got the sort of transport hubs that not a lot of people go there; they just transfer through. So he just kept things quiet, which is what he does. So for the most part of it, we didn't really know why he wasn't coming back. Probably because he'd always used to say he was always working, which is fine. For Dad, it was always like, you know, got to do work. He enjoys his work. He loves his work. He loves doing what he does. So we just were like, fine, okay, it's no big deal from there. Nathan knew more than I did because over here, I just got on with things, put my head down and cracked on. Whereas he was obviously living with Mum and Dad still, before he migrated out to New Zealand, Australia. So, yeah, I wasn't really massively aware of what's going on.
I mean, these are new countries, and I don't think that they're very long-sighted, that they have a long-term plan. And I think they would rather make a mess and clean it up later than actually prevent things occurring in the first place. So, but we'll see how we go with that.
They're just going to do themselves damage. I know that when Dad's first, all this started coming to light just before summer, really, I know there was a few people that sort of contacted me in the civil engineering world that, you know, they've gone down this sort of same route that Dad had, and they'd be like, well, we do get contractors sometimes to go out to Qatar, and that'll make me think twice going there anymore. So all they're doing is they're shooting themselves in the foot, really, at the end of the day, because when you haven't got anyone else going out there and there's no one to fill the gaps, what's going to happen? So after all this lovely work that's been done, you know, who's going to maintain it? Who's going to keep it going? Or is it just going to fall into ruin again and then they'll just do it again? So I don't know. We'll see.
Now, a big thank you to Ross Crook, son of Ranald Crook, for joining us on the show today. It's very hard to talk about this difficult situation the family faces. And a big thank you to David Plowman, Ross Crook's long-term friend, for being such an advocate for his release. Ranald Crook has an amazing support base of people who are lobbying not only the government but also the private sector to secure his release and freedom. It's incredibly disturbing that Ranald's detention in Qatar has gone on as long as it has. This should serve as a warning to investors, entrepreneurs, and tourists that Qatar has a long way to go in developing and ensuring safeguards against this sort of legal abuse. We at Detained in Doha continue to lobby the Qatari government and the British FCO to intervene in this very unjust case of Ranald Crook. Ranald deserves our support, and he deserves the commerce and business sector in the UK to stand up to Qatar and say, enough is enough. If you want to attract our investors and our skilled labourers, our engineers, to Qatar, then you must ensure their safety. And you can do this by freeing Ranald Crook. Thank you for listening to Gulf Injustice.